All right, well, this webinar is being started. We want to thank all of you for joining us here at Cleveland Sister Cities 2022. My name is Felton Thomas. I'm the Executive Director of the Cleveland Public Library and the moderator for this panel. I want to thank you for joining this panel. We know that in our communities, the concept of diversity, equity, and inclusion are very important topics that people are talking about. One of those areas that don't get enough discussion is the work that we do for those with disabilities. In libraries, the libraries have had a long history of working with those who are sight impaired. So we are, or print disabled. We are very proud to have a wonderful panel here for you today. But before we get into things, I would like to thank our sponsors and donors who have made Sister Cities possible this year. They are Eaton Corporation, SwageLock, the Cleveland Hungarian Development Panel, the University of Akron, the Rotary Club of Cleveland, the Lithuanian American Community Cleveland chapter, the Slovenian Museum and Archives. We want to thank them for their support. We have several panelists now that we will have gathered together to discuss this topic, and they're going to do presentations, and at the end, you'll be able to ask questions. So if you have questions, just put them in the question box or raise your hand. We'll be able to get them. Staff will work to make sure that any questions are available to be passed along to our staff, to our panelists. First, I'm going to give some bios. The first is for William Reed, the fourth, who is the regional librarian for the Ohio Library for the Blind and Physically Disabled. It's a part of our Cleveland Public Library here. He has spent more than 10 years working in library services to patrons with disabilities and training patrons on how to use adaptive computers and technology. Next is Kelsey Carlette Rivera, who joined the National Library Service for the Blind and Print Disabled as the foreign language librarian in July of 2020. She is responsible for selecting foreign language books for the NLS collection and managing NLS's Marrakesh Treaty implementation. Kelsey is originally from Montana and completed her undergraduate studies at Harvard University and graduate studies at the University of Maryland. Next, we have Dominic Spinelli, the head of the collection development section at the National Library for the Sight Impaired in Washington, D.C. Thank you, Dominic, for joining us. We have Mikael Chikasik. I was close, Mikael. I was close. He's the lead coordinator of the Braille Authority of Slovakia and Mate Rabinda's Library for the Blind in Lavaca. Michael is a member of the Braille Work Group of the European Blind Union. And finally, we will have Chiara Byzantine, who will provide some information of Vicente's library and their work for supporting those who are sight impaired. So with that said, we are going to start the presentation with a joint presentation from Will, Dominic, and Kelsey. And I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Director. I'm just going to get my screen shared. All right. Everybody see the screen all right? Good morning and thank you for joining us. Today I will cover the who, what, and why of Cleveland Public Library services to people with print disabilities through the Ohio Library for the Blind and Print Disabled. All in about 5 minutes, so I can turn this presentation over to Dominic and Kelsey from the National Library Service for the Blind and Print Disabled. In the spirit of reaching out to our global communities, I felt it was an excellent opportunity to showcase NLS's activities and efforts to cultivate and expand our access to international reading materials for people with print disabilities. Cleveland is a melting pot of communities of diverse nationalities that experience print disabilities. English as a second language is not always the case. It is vital to offer access to a thoughtful and vibrant foreign language collection. Who we are. Cleveland Public Library Director Linda Eastman founded the Library for the Blind 125 years ago, which started as a group of volunteers who read aloud to blind patrons. She opened Braille classes and secured funding to purchase books to circulate to patrons starting in 1903, which extended to 55 northern counties in Ohio. She assigned a full-time staff member when she found a permanent home for Library for the Blind in the new main library when it opened in 1925. Her work in establishing the Library for the Blind and building a circulating collection led to Cleveland being invited as one of the original 19 charter libraries, establishing the Library of Congress's National Library Service for the Blind Print Disabled in 1931. Cleveland serves as the NLS Regional Library for the state of Ohio and partners with the State Library of Ohio to deliver services. What we do is provide a free library program of audio and Braille reading materials circulated to eligible borrowers in the state of Ohio by postage-free mail and for download. This includes educational and recreational reading, typically available from most public libraries. Eligible borrowers are U.S. citizens experiencing a permanent or temporary disability that prevents them from reading standard print because of blindness, visual disability that cannot be corrected with lenses or eyeglasses, physical disability that limits eye movement, holding a book, or turning pages, deaf-blind, and reading disability. In addition to providing audio and Braille library materials throughout Ohio, we also offer audio described DVDs, reader advisory and reference services, adaptive technology access and training, tech support with our services and equipment, programming of interest to our patrons, both in person and remotely statewide, outreach programs on library services and topics of interest to our consumers, specialized services to teachers and students, as well as state correctional facilities, adult, kids, and teen book clubs, producing audiobooks and magazines of local interest, and helping libraries statewide to bridge gaps to patrons with print disabilities. We have over 10,000 excellent reasons of why we do what we do in the form of individual patrons and institutions across the state that rely on these services. In their own words, here is why the Library for the Blind is important to them. Quote number 1, I'd be an 82-year-old man sitting alone in the house wondering what to do next. With this program, life is exciting again. It's something to look forward to. You'll never know what a difference you've made in my life, and I thank you very, very much. Quote number 2, when I lost my vision, I just thought life was over with. I was just so grateful. It's very good that they have this available for individuals like myself. Quote number 3, I am very grateful for the many years of reading pleasure that you provided free of charge for my mother. They gave meaning to her life when there was not much else she could physically do. I moved quickly through this information. If you have further questions or wish to learn more, please feel free to visit our webpage, email, or call. Thank you again, and now I will turn the presentation over to Dominic and Kelsey.
Thank you, Will. I'm going to try to present a slideshow as well. Give me a second to set this up. Oh, sorry. having issues with this. Let me try this again. Are you able to see
We
the
are.
slides?
we
Okay,
are.
okay, thank you. Sorry
you go.
about that delay. Hi, I'm Dominic Spinelli. As Will said, I work with NLS, the National Library Service for the Blind and Print Disabled. I'm sorry for the wasted time there. I'll try to speed through my stuff to not get behind schedule. I want to talk about what NLS does generally. We'll introduce that he works with one of the network libraries, and I'm going to talk about how we interact and set things up for Kelsey to talk about our world language collection specifically and some exciting elements with that. So I'm the head of the collection development section for NLS, the National Library Service for the Blind and Print Disabled. We are a division of the Library of Congress. We provide free library service for people with temporary or permanent low vision, blindness, or physical disability, or any other a print disability that prevents them from reading or holding standard print material. So several people qualify for our service. It is a free service that's provided to residents through our network of libraries. As Will mentioned, this was established by an act of Congress in 1931. Will is his library is one of the original participating libraries in this network, but we have over 100 participating libraries across the US. NLS services are available to any residents of the United States or its territories and to US citizens who are living abroad. Kelsey and I are talking about what we do sort of at the centralized collection development, but all of this is shared out through our network libraries to patrons. All the NLS services are administered to through the network of regional and sub-regional libraries across the US. We offer books and magazines in Braille and in audio that can be instantly downloaded and played on a personal device. This could be on a personal smart device, a refreshable Braille device, or a digital talking book machine, which I think I have. Okay, on this next slide here, I've got an image of that. If you haven't seen, digital talking book machine looks very similar to an old cassette player, if you will, but it takes in a digital cartridge of the audio file. We've also got Bard Mobile for your individual devices for a smartphone or a tablet that can be used to access this material with the same accessible controls. And we have new refreshable Braille e-readers. So NLS does the content building in partnership with a lot of our network libraries who have their own studios to produce this. And we also provide technology to use those accessible books. So we provide digital talking book machines. We provide access to Bard, our Braille and audio reading download service, and we have started providing refreshable Braille devices, such as what's pictured on this slide. The collection development section that I represent, we select titles that get reformatted or reproduced into an accessible format. So starting with the original book that either gets converted into Braille or into accessible audio, which is what we often call a digital talking book, and that's like a standard audiobook, except with additional navigation points and additional features that make it more accessible. You can adjust the playback speed, the tone, the pitch, the navigation markers that we had to allow for you to jump around allow for our patrons to jump around more easily within the book, using the components of the device that they're reading the book on. So the goal at NLS is to make sure that all may read. Having a low vision or disability doesn't mean that they have to give up access to reading material. We work with libraries, as I mentioned, around the nation and around the world to ensure that our patrons still have access to the same reading material that their families and friends are enjoying every year as well. Hopefully I kept that within 5 minutes. I'm sorry if I went a bit over, but I want to hand over to Kelsey to talk more specifically about what we are doing with the World Language Collection. Thank you.
Thanks, Dominic. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen as well. If you wouldn't mind unsharing yours, then I can.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right, thanks so much. I'm Kelsey Corlett Rivera, and as mentioned, I'm the foreign language librarian here at NLS, and I'm also one of the people leading the implementation of the Marrakesh Treaty. So I'm very happy to be here today. Very simply, my main job is to select books in languages other than English to add to the NLS collection. So those are then produced or acquired as audio or Braille and shared with patrons. So I'm going to just share the high points about the Marrakesh Treaty, the materials it's allowed to add to our collection, and then our world language collection in general. So many different countries produce audio and Braille books for blind and print disabled patrons. Prior to the Marrakesh Treaty, which is administered by the World Intellectual Property Organization and was fully implemented in the US in July of 2020, those accessible books couldn't be shared across borders. So that meant that each country would have to create their own accessible version, sometimes of the exact same books. Now we're able to share freely across borders. This on the slide is a photo of when the instrument of ratification was submitted to the WIPO Director General by the head of the US mission to the United Nations. So here you can see the countries marked in red where the Marrakesh Treaty is currently in force. This includes a lot of Latin America, the US, Canada, Mexico, Russia, a lot of East Asia, and then it's very widespread in Europe. Not so much in the Middle East or Africa at this point. And I should note that some of the other countries that have signed the Marrakesh Treaty have not yet fully implemented, and then not all of these countries are sharing books on a regular basis at this point. So fortunately, I mean, the Marrakesh Treaty has been a huge boon to NLS and our collection. Since 2020, we've added about 3,500 audio, Braille, and Braille music scores to the NLS collection in 16 different languages. So those languages are Arabic, Basque, Chinese, Danish, English, Finnish, French, German, Greek, Hebrew, Italian, Japanese, Polish, Portuguese, Spanish, and Vietnamese. And those have been downloaded more than 60,000 times by our patrons. So along with that great foreign language content we've been getting, we've also gotten many books in English from Canada and other English-speaking countries. And all of that is at no monetary cost to NLS. So on the other hand, we've also shared over 100,000 of our audio and Braille books with other countries, which have been downloaded from the WIPO-based Accessible Books Consortium's Global Book Service catalog over 6,000 times by 44 different countries. And in fact, we recently shared a number of Ukrainian audiobooks that were originally recorded right in Cleveland to support Ukrainian refugees in need of accessible books in Europe. Earlier in 2022, our work in getting the NLS Marrakesh process up and running was featured in the Washington Post magazine, which was pretty exciting. And just overall, we're really working to increase the numbers of books that we have available for our patrons who would prefer to read in languages other than English. So we've been able to really increase that quantity through Marrakesh, but also through some other avenues, which means that currently on our Braille and audio reading download service, we have 7,160 foreign language books in 49 different languages. I should know at this time we only have one book in Slovak, which is the New Testament of the Bible, but we'd welcome more. And we do have over 1,000 books in Italian. It's one of our more in-demand languages. So we are continuing to try to add new and different languages along with more material in the most in-demand languages. So some of those on our radar are Tagalog, Haitian Creole, Somali, Pashto, among many others. So that's all I have for right now, but I'd be happy to take questions during the Q&A, or you could feel free to reach out if you do have any questions in the future. So thank you, and I will go ahead and stop sharing my screen now.
So before we get to Miguel's presentation, I just wanted to ask Kelsey and Dominic real quick about collecting, because it's, you know, it may not be a question that comes up for others, but for a librarian, it's really interesting to wonder, how do you go about getting the books that the bestsellers? Do you have issues with getting bestsellers for the sight impaired?
Oh, great. Yeah, good question. I can take that. So our collection is really similar to what you'd find in a standard public library. Each of the network libraries that we work with, they might also have their own additions to it for local interest. For example, you know, if there's an Ohio author that's written material that they want to have added to the collection, a lot of network libraries work in their own. But on the national scale, what Kelsey and I work with, we have agreements with a lot of U.S. publishers to provide the source material for the production of the accessible book. So a lot of the Penguin Random House, Hachette, Macmillan, for example, they're really great about working with us to provide commercial audio and in some cases ebooks for titles that we then generate as an accessible book for the collection. When we're not able to get through an existing agreement with a publisher, we also have relationships with vendors to purchase material, in which case that is used for the production of book, for the production of our accessible version of the book, and that is allowed for in the original Act of Congress from 1931, and it has been supported and amended over time to expand what we're allowed to do with that. So yeah, we start with an original printed book. Lately, you know, the last few years, we've been fortunate to have that be ebook, and that quickens the process of then producing an accessible book.
Thanks, appreciate that answer. Miguel,
Oh, sure.
how are you?
I wish very nice and good morning to everybody, although we are just finishing afternoon coffee here in Europe, Middle Europe. But well, I will just share my screen as well. I hope you can see it now.
Yes, very good.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Michal Tkáčik, and I work in Slovak Library for Blind. It's a Matej Hrebenda Slovak Library for Blind. I work as a lead coordinator of the Braille Authority of Slovakia, which is actually one of the tasks our library is doing. These are two people who are very important for us. One of them is Matej Hrebenda. It was a blind librarian or colporteur of the books, selling books in 19th century. He was almost blind, and we chose him as our honored person. And the other one is, of course, Louis Braille. Slovakia is actually a small country with something over 5 million people, and this means that our library serves some percentage of these people, although this percentage is not clear because we don't have statistics about how many actually blind people live in Slovakia. We have some statistics on that kind, some statistic of that other kind of disability, but we don't have statistics for all the people who are eligible for our services. Our library is a library for blind, visually impaired, and print disabled people. And of course, we are holding to the Marrakesh Treaty as it was ratified in Slovakia as well. So we keep with this. And although I don't have any statistics on blind people in Slovakia, I can tell that we have 1,200 patrons we are serving, and these people are in age of, well, actually from child to really elderly people using our services. As to the services of our library, of course, we are offering book lending service, and we work with 30 county libraries in different cities of Slovakia, because we are the only library who is producing and holding in fund accessible books for visually impaired and print disabled people. To be able to offer those books for people as a present form, we work or cooperate with these 30 county libraries, and we are circling some packages of books every quarter of year, and this way we get books to our patrons who are simply preferring to visit the library on their own. Of course, we offer also mail service and delivery service within our city in Levoča, which is actually our headquarters. So in our city, we even deliver books, audio or braille. Recently, I checked the numbers of our fund, and we have 7,500 audiobooks. Most of them are in Slovak language, although we have also some books in Hungarian and some few books in English. It's 60 years of recording these books by professional actors, and last 10 or 15 years we were digitizing all these books, and now, as you can see towards the bottom of the slide, they are digitized in a digital library. So all of the books, audiobooks, are available for our patrons on the website, of course, after they log in and so on. We offer 3,700 braille books, which actually is not a high number, but as I will tell later on, we are a rather small library with something over 50 workers, and we have to offer all the services people need. Even if they are fewer people, fewer patrons, they need all the materials as they would be 10,000 or 20,000. So we have to create audiobooks, braille books. We are digitizing books, and as you can see, also recently we are offering e-braille books. It means digitized braille book formatted in 40 cells per 25 lines, and we have now 500 of those on the website. Of course, one of our leading activities is braille production and braille and tactile production, because our library is the only library or only institution even in Slovakia who is producing materials for public institutions. There are, of course, some other centers where they create tactile and braille materials for education, um, education system or schools, but our library is the only one who produces um, these materials, for example, for galleries or museums and so on. On the top of this, we produce magazines for our patrons. For now, we have 18 magazines in different forms, audio one, braille, and larger prints. And these magazines are, well, some of them are with monthly period, some of them 2 months period, some of them 3, but they are quite a lot, and our team is really trying to cover all the areas of interest of our patrons. With these magazines, we create calendars for our patrons, or well, for anybody who is wishing and willing to buy them. They are calendars in braille, large print, and tactile form as well. Every year, we produce all of them in all variants for our patrons. Magazines are sent to our patrons also in the digital periodicals, and these are actually magazines which cover most of the interests, or we believe and we listen to our patrons and trying to also always take new magazines which are important and they ask for about society, culture, law, which is very important for disabled people to know what's going on in the law area. This is the example of our calendar of tactile and braille producing. We offer our patrons different events for joining us and joining together. These are actually events of really different kinds of areas, life areas. One which is quite regular is focused in literature, as we are the library, so we are trying to give our patrons as much knowledge about this as possible. And for this, we are inviting different authors, literature critics, and other people who can speak about the books or the stories they wrote, and different kinds and areas of the literature. Of course, we also try to focus in a culture area and show our people things they probably could not visit or see, or it could be difficult for them because of, for example, distance. They wouldn't travel for something to the other side of the Slovakia. So we are trying to bring these cultural discussions or exhibitions to our library, and they can visit us and see these things, and most of all touch these things. So this we really try to always be sure about that the exhibitioner is willing to really show to blind people as well all the things they bring. Last month, I, for example, have been touching the head and well, deer head and boar head and so on. So it's very interesting. For example, this was the last year event we were showing with cooperation of Museum of Nature, a mushroom um, growing and differences and so on. Along with these events, we also focus in some good case studies or good case examples of people who managed to find a job in some interesting area. I mean, blind or visually impaired people or print disabled people who managed to go on with the life, and we find this very motivating in our patrons as well. The last but not least is the Braille Authority of Slovakia, which is actually a new institute in Slovakia. It was based in 2020, and it belongs to Slovak Library for the Blind, as we are the only producer of Braille and textile materials. The Braille Authority of Slovakia is responsible for all the things the Braille Authority should be and is in all the countries. And I'm the lead coordinator, and I could speak about this like weeks, you know, so I hope I will not go too long. The most important is, of course, standardization of the Braille, because we need to have standards in Slovakia and establish them, and even if we are using, of course, Braille for tens of years, or maybe 100 years, we need to refurbish it, and we need to reflect on the new ways the Braille is taught, the Braille is used, and the way it should be in the life of the blind person involved. The promotion of Braille is difficult anywhere I look to. So we are actually struggling with the same problems as any other country, even a bit more, maybe a bit harder or fiercer struggle, because we are too small country to some activities. But well, anyway, we are doing as much as we can towards the blind people. Promotion of the Braille, and it's using from the beginning of the education, children or educating children in elementary schools and so on. Of course, we also have to promote and want to promote the Braille among the public institutions, such as public transport, museums, and so on. To be good coordinator of the Braille Authority of Slovakia, I became a member of EBU, European Blind Union Braille Work Group, where I'm quite active member, trying to learn as much as I can from any other country, any other colleague, and bring this good practice to Slovakia. We are also doing a podcast. Of course, it's in Slovak, so I'm sorry that you can't follow it, but if there would be somebody interested in Slovak, it is on our website, www.skn.sk/sabp, and there you can find the podcast. We created a film, a very short film, 13 minutes, film about the Braille in Slovakia, and it is fortunately in English as well, so anybody is interested, you can find it on YouTube under this name I can't see. And this is our beautiful city, which is actually heritage of UNESCO, and anybody of you is welcomed here anytime you come. Thank you. for your attention.
Thank you, Miguel. That was really interesting. And one of the things that I think I heard from Kelsey, right, is that you would like to have more material in Slovak.
Yes, we don't have anywhere near as much as we would like to have. So I've already jotted down Mikhail's email address to follow up after the presentation.
Yeah, sure. I will be very grateful. It's actually now we are in the process of discussing with ABC and trying to somehow get to all the mechanisms of lending books cross-border.
Excellent. That's part of what this conference is about, is actually having action come from it, and just not a lot of presentations. So thank you, Miguel, and let's make that partnership work there. So we are very fortunate also to have Chiara Byzantine joining us from Vicenza, Italy, and she is going to talk about what they're doing there.
Okay, so good morning to everyone, and thank you to you and the organizer for this call. I try to share my screen if you want, because I have some slides. I don't know if, okay,
I get it to work there.
Okay, it's okay for you?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm the president of this library, Biblioteca Bertoliana in Vicenza. Bertoliana library is ancient and contemporary in the same times, the second library in Veneto region, and has more than 500,000 of books, but most of all 6,000 of ancient books and manuscripts, all of them digitalized. And I give you a very partial exposition of our mission, of our project dedicated to sight impaired users. You can read, Born to Read, Books for All, and the Spoken Book. In Vicenza, we have something like a number of visually impaired people, around 13,000 inhabitants. So the number is quite, strong for this very teeny city. I remember that Vicenza has 100,000 of inhabitants. And for that reason, the Bertoliana Civic, because we are a civic library, started from the beginning of this millennium, 3 services: the spoken book, Books for All, and Born to Read. These projects are today in 2 modes, in a virtual one, and also in a physical mode. And the latter one, this one, can become a problem for us for the localization of the library, the physical localization of the library, because we are ancient, organized inside the ancient palaces, especially in the city center of the city. Just to get an idea of the city center building where we operated, we have 3 libraries in the city center of Vicenza and 5 libraries in the neighborhoods, in the suburbs, just to have a look of our, places. I told you this because I'm an architect, and also I teach at Polytechnic in Milan. And so for us, it's sometimes a problem to have beautiful, of course, but ancient spaces for our users. And these are this one. These are in the suburbs of Vicenza. So, the service, the spoken books, is aimed for favors the autonomy of the person that are unable to read independently. And we promoted and integrated social life in the world of work and school through completely free distribution of books, recorded, and also allows to access to the database of Bertoliane to download everything in selected files. But there is another service that for me is quite interesting our library that is not so big. I mean, we are very important for ancient patrimony and materials, but we are not so, modern and contemporary for services. Just from now. And this is the project Books for All. What is Books for All is a very huge inclusive shelf with quite a lot of elements. For example, books in symbols, books translated in symbols of augmentative alternative communication technique, books illustrated in Italian sign languages, children books, idly readable books for most of all children with specific reading difficulties, books, of course, in the traditional method of writing and reading for blind, so books in Braille. We have a lot of books, tactile books with tactile insert, with also elements made of different material. For us, for example, is very important the books, the artistic books, maybe because our city is very ancient, but also artistic. We are a UNESCO heritage city, Palladio and so on. So for example, for us, art and artistic moments for our users are really important, and also silent books, so textless books, and audio books, audio recording of books. I remember also that the tactile books is a part of the project Born to Read. And for that project, I remember that to all the newborn in Vicenza and in his territory, the Bertoliana Library gives for free the library card and some books for the babies to learn the importance of the reading, also in these different forms. So everything of them, everything of this project you can find in our portal and also in our Facebook, on Instagram, social. So you can read and you can show and you can see them in our portal. And just only to tell thank you to invite me, and we want to come to give you the possibility to come in Vicenza and to see our library, but also our beautiful city. Thank you very much.
Well, I think we would all take up that if we could. We would love to come there. Both your cities of Tinda and then Kobe, very beautiful places. We are getting toward the end of the, and I don't see any questions. And for any of the attendees, if you have questions or things you want to add, please put in the Q&A and in the chat. But there was one question I did have for all who might want to be able to answer this. I know on the library side, there's IFLA to connect the international libraries. Is there anything in place to connect internationally those who work with the blind and sight impaired?
I could probably speak to that a little bit. So this is Kelsey, and there is a specific committee within IFLA. It's called the Section for Libraries Serving People with Print Disabilities. And that is open to anybody who works in a library who is supporting people with print disabilities. And there's a steering committee, and I am on the steering committee. And so that's where we're able to talk about things like how the Accessible Books Consortium is working. If we have any feedback there, try to do outreach to expand membership and make sure that some of these bigger libraries, it's, you know, the US, the UK, Australia, lots of the Scandinavian and Northern European libraries, Germany, libraries with a huge amount of experience and very large collections that could contribute to the rest of the world. So that's one specific organization that I'm familiar with that serves to connect specifically libraries like NLS and like Chiara's and Mikhail's as well.
Very good. Mikhail, I know you mentioned you're in the European Blind Union. How many countries are involved in that?
We are the group of 8 people, and actually we are cooperating mostly about the Braille. It's not much about library and book services. It's mostly about using the Braille in any area you can find or you can imagine. If somebody is interested in our work, there is portal livingbraille.eu. You can check it out. It's open for anybody who is interested in Braille as such. So I invite anybody who is interested. As to the group, I'm there from Slovakia. There is Germany, Austria, Spain, France, Sweden, and UK. And Belgium. Yeah.
So, Will, I've kind of ignored you because I talk to you all the time, right? So, but let me put this question to you because it's a very interesting question. How many folks, percentage-wise, are using Braille any longer?
From our experience and like what our statistics show, about 10% of our readership is using Braille of those that are registered as blind or visually with a visual disability. So about 10% of our readers, that equates to about 600 Braille users that we have currently subscribed, getting services from us.
So Chiara and Mikhail, are you finding that people are moving away from Braille, or it continues to be the dominant way of servicing your communities?
In Italy, the audio system is really, quite the main situation for a blind person. But for example, we have connection with other museums, and the blind, the Braille method is really used in museum. But for example, not so much in our library. In our library, the users want audio most of all.
Yeah, I can add to this that actually the number of users of Braille is decreasing, and it's actually alarming wherever I talk to any Braille expert or Braille authority. And we are trying to promote it as much as possible, because to put it simply, the Braille is literacy, so it's very important. And fortunately for now, in our library, our books are still read by quite maybe this 10% could be quite fair estimate, even in Slovakia, I would say. So still we have some patrons who read Braille, and I am very glad, for example, that we have even patrons who lost their sight as adult people, and even in this stage, in this case, they want read the Braille books.
Mm. So we've got one question and a question and answer, and this is probably from Miguel, Kiera, and Will. And that question is, well, actually it's for Miguel and Kiera. Do many of your patrons come to the library in person, or do you reach them primarily by mail?
For me, it depends because, for example, in the headquarters in the suburbs, most of all families, children are coming in person, okay? Because are very near, I mean, physically to the place they live. Otherwise, in the city center, the questions are quite virtually, and of course, there are quite a lot of students. More of them, the users in the city center are students, most of all. And so, I mean, they are habit with digital services. And this is maybe the difference about inhabitants of a city center, or the user of city center libraries, and the users of our libraries in the suburbs. So it really depends.
Miguel?
In our library, we are finding out that people, of course, are preferring to have services like lending books and magazines online in digital form. It's quite a majority, but still we have quite a lot of people who prefers either Braille or audio books or magazines sent by email. By mail, by standard mail. So these two channels would be, I guess, the most used for lending books. But then there are, as I showed in presentation, there are events, and these are interesting for people to come and see and touch things and speak with the others and so on. Although we are trying to implement online versions to those as well. So we are trying to do both things together. It is like the event is running in person, but still we hold some camera and some online space for it, because Slovakia is quite small country, but it's like very long, so it's quite difficult to get from one side to the other, and nobody is going to travel 400 kilometers for some event. So this way we I think face the needs of our patrons the best way we can. So combining is the way for us.
Thank you, Miguel. So we have come to the end of our panel. All right, we've been here for an hour, and I have learned a tremendous amount. Even with Will being here, I have learned so much from all of you. So I want to thank you all for joining us, Miguel, Kelsey, Dominic. Kiera had to leave a little bit earlier, but thank you all for adding this to this great panel and your expertise. We want to once again end by thanking our sponsors and donors who made this conference possible: Eden Corporation, Swage Lock, Cleveland Hungarian Development Panel, the University of Akron, Cleveland Rotary Club, Lithuanian American Community, Slovenian Museum and Archives, the City of Cleveland, and Cleveland Public Library. Thank you for joining our session. And the next session is Cleveland and Beit Shan, a STEM partnership that will happen at 11 a.m. So once again, thank you to all, and enjoy your day.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us.